Well, thank you for joining in with us. We are actually going to do something a little bit different today. We're going to put together sort of a compilation of some different exercises, different stretches, different tips, just a whole bunch of different things that you can have in your arsenal if you have to do a lot of sitting throughout the day. We know a lot of you sit for work. You either maybe already did that before all of the COVID stuff, or you're doing way more of it now. And sitting can really give us a lot of trouble over time when we do that for long periods. So we have a lot of great ideas, and we're excited to go through a few of those things with you here. One of the things we do want to touch on, I'm gonna bump that one up here, is just with your exercise sessions that you're doing with us. If you're finding that your days are getting crazy, busy, you're not getting to them here and there, you don't have to forego them completely. You can actually mix them into your day, and you'll get a lot of benefits. You won't feel maybe at the time quite the same as going and doing 15 minutes of an interval, but it will add up throughout the day. So what we're talking about is just mixing in a minute whenever you can of a different exercise. And you can do this in a variety of ways. You can either look and see what exercises Krista or Heather did that day on their program, and you can use those 5 exercises. You can just use 5 any body weight exercises, and then just set a timer for a minute, do a minute of one of them, and an hour later, or whenever you have time again, do a minute of a different one, and just do that throughout the day. If you can get 5 for sure, but even 10, that's 10 minutes of bursts that you just did that day versus doing nothing. If you're finding that it's difficult to get in 15 to 30 minutes in one full amount. So that's something that we would highly recommend rather than just skipping a workout on a crazy day, because number one, I think you'll feel better that you didn't skip your workout. A lot of times we get a little bit of guilt for that. But number two, I think your brain and your energy and your body are going to feel a lot better as well. For sure. Do you have any thoughts about bursts or 1 minutes or anything for when they can't exercise?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's good for your concentration and your focus too, when you can just take a little bit of a break and just kind of get in your body, like even for a minute. It's super beneficial for other reasons besides just physically. Like Jenny said, there's kind of like a guilt thing that follows when you realize that you're probably not going to be able to get your workout in for the day. But we just want to drive home the fact that it doesn't have to be all or nothing, and finding some sort of place in the middle is how you're going to be able to incorporate this into your lifestyle without putting so much pressure on yourself. If you can't do a workout in a day, that's okay. You don't have to put so much pressure on yourself. It'll stress you out more than it's worth. So these burst exercises are just a really good way to keep some exercise in your day, but not have it overwhelm you. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's easy if you miss a day and then you miss another day and another day, let's say, and then getting back into the routine just almost seems insurmountable. But if you know that you've done little bits, it doesn't seem so far away the next time that you have time to do a workout. And I think it closes that gap a little bit, and it makes it more feasible that you're not gonna fall off the bandwagon. And I think it's the same in any aspect of our lifestyle habits, but just specific to fitness and specific to what we're talking about today. I just think that it'll help you feel better and help it make it easier for you to get back into it when you have the time again. Mm-hmm. So this is our little workstation here. Just grab a table that was easy to move. And we have a couple different chairs that we're gonna show you as we go through different things here. But for starters, I wanna show you some basic postural things that you need to make sure that you're aware of. So like when Heather started working at our office a couple months ago, did you have a headache or something one of those first days you sat at the desk?
Yeah, it was like down my upper back. It was just like pulling and aching and causing headaches, and yeah.
And you did, well, we moved the monitor forward a little bit, and then we did a chair swap, right? Mm-hmm. And that helped. That was a big difference for you. So we do have a video on our Cornerstone YouTube page, and I think we linked to it from Facebook too, if that's easier for you, just on how to set up your computer. And that's just really important, because if you're spending a lot of hours there, it does matter where you have your monitor, left, right, up, down, even forward, backward, in all 3 planes. It does matter how high your chair is or what type of a chair you're sitting on. So go ahead and pull that video up if you feel like maybe you need a little help in the setting up your computer department. But just in our own body's posture, posture, that's the first thing we want to look at here today. And so if we can get our feet flat on the floor, that's ideal. If we can have our knees at a 90-degree angle, that's ideal. If your hips start to get especially too low of 90, you're really gonna start to feel that, I think, in your hips and your SI joints and your hip flexors. So at a minimum, you wanna be parallel. If you're a little higher than that, I don't think it'll actually bother too much. With the back, it's easy to get tired and start to slouch. Usually that's a good idea to go take a break, actually. But having a chair that has lumbar support, and so this one is like sort of a mixture because it has good lumbar support, but it's super deep for my legs. And so it's hard to get all the way back. I would be way far away from a computer. So it can be difficult to find a good chair. Sometimes you have to mod it, as my kids would say, and modify and make it fit your body. And you might need to tuck something back here so that you can actually have the right length for your hips. But Heather can maybe tell you a little bit about the chair she's sitting on because she's been using that a lot more here in our office.
Yeah, the reason that I like this chair so much is that it kind of, not like you feel like you're gonna fall over, but you feel like you're on less of a stable surface than a chair such as that would be. So you're kind of forced to wake up through your muscles. Like I find myself instantly like, you know, my hips are kind of slouching back, but instantly when I sit in this chair, I wanna tilt my pelvis forward so that my spine is in good alignment, and I feel like, you know, it's way harder for me to slouch here because I just feel really unstable. So it just kind of forces me to be up in good posture, and there is a nice little backrest here if I need it, but kind of like Jenny said, it's hard when you have short little legs to, you know, get all the way back there and feel like you're still in a good position. So I kind of sit forward a little bit usually, try to be conscious of keeping my shoulders back and down and my feet flat on the floor. Another reason I really like this chair is that I can like widen my legs too if that feels better. So sometimes if I widen my legs and I get my hips more like underneath me, I don't have quite so much like hip flexor tension or anything like that. Like if I feel like my hips are starting to get a little bit too tight in the chair, I can widen them out a little bit, get a little bit closer to my monitor. So that really helps for like neck strain as well, because I'm not sitting there trying to like look at the computer too.
Yeah.
So this chair is just nice because it has a lot more options, you know, ways you can sit. You can kind of make it your own, whatever's comfortable for you.
And you don't have to go out and buy something new. I mean, if you want to, that's great. But, you know, if you already have an exercise ball, or if you're thinking about getting one, because there's a lot of great things you can do with this for some of your fitness too, you can use this as a chair. We've just, you know, gotten some of those as options here because in an office setting, it's been nice to have the wheels on the bottom so that they can move around. And then if they do get up to go do something, they don't have to worry about making sure the ball gets tucked or, you know, and doesn't go rolling into the next room. But if you're working from home or if you have some flexibility in your office, you can use a regular exercise ball. You know, it's certainly the cost would be pretty minimal to obtain an exercise ball at the store or online or whatever it might be, and then you can use it for multiple things. And it's not that you can't take that out and use that for exercise too, but if you know, aren't interested in splurging on the stand there, you can always make something like this work also and get the same benefits.
For sure.
Good, good. So if you're joining us live, feel free to pop in as we go along and ask questions if you need to turn your mic on. And once we start showing some stretches and things, I'd like you to try them with us so that if you have any questions or you're not feeling what we're saying, you can let us know. So we mentioned as we were kind of talking about the different chairs, taking breaks, and that's going to be really, really important because our bodies are not designed to sit for these long, long periods of time. And no matter how fancy of a setup you get with your workstation, your body is still just not going to like sitting if you don't give it some breaks. So your spines especially, obviously is my specialty, your spines are healthiest and they cleanse themselves and bring in nutrients through walking and that pressure on the discs of moving and walking around. So like if you find that you're starting to slouch or you find that you need that backrest or you're changing positions, usually that's your body just telling you, get up and take a break. I've been doing this for way too long. And it doesn't have to be a long break. You can go to the bathroom, you can go get some water, which will also obviously help with any brain fatigue or you know, cloudy thinking or sore muscles, anything like that. But I would really encourage you to take, you know, as many breaks as you feasibly can and still get your work done. Sometimes the breaks that you take are just little micro quick 10-20 second breaks in your chair. So we're going to show you a couple of those with your eyes and with your neck. So I'll show you your eyes first. Especially if you're working on a computer, you do want to take eye breaks because computer strain, number one, can cause headaches, but in the long run can potentially affect the quality of our vision. So it is important to take our eyes and our eye muscles through just a basic range of motion. And so you can just slowly look from side to side, left to right, and up and down. And then another great thing you can do is focus far away and focus close. So just pick two objects and focus on them. And so just go through that a few different times. Look side, look up, look down, far away, close, far away, close, and really focus when you're doing the far away and close so that the object you're looking at becomes clear to you. So that would be a great thing to do for your eyes. And we also, in the video, if you pull that up, show some of the eye strain glasses you can get, and that helps with some of the blue light and the glare. But still moving those muscles is something that you can't, even a computer glasses, the amber glasses aren't going to help you with that. You do need to actively stop and do that. You want to show with the neck?
Sure. So yeah, if you feel like you're needing a break, like the biggest thing for me when I feel like my neck is starting to kind of pull down through my shoulders a little bit and I'm starting to compensate through my upper back by slouching and stuff like that, it's nice to just take a step back and say, okay, I'm going to take a minute and do some neck stretches. So to start those neck stretches, you just want to make sure that your upper body is in good position. So pull those shoulder blades back and down. Make sure you're not over-arcing through the lower back. Find a nice neutral position. One good way to do that is to round your hips forward, round them backwards, and then find a nice position in the middle. That will be neutral. That will be basically whatever feels the most comfortable to you, because we're all a little bit different and in the lower part of our spine. The curve is just a little bit different in everybody. So you'll find a position that feels best for you. Make sure your feet are flat on the floor. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna take our head over, so our ear is coming down towards our shoulder. It doesn't have to quite touch, but just kind of the intention. And you can take some nice deep breaths. I usually try to take 3 deep breaths. And then you can swap to the other side, ear down to the shoulder. If you want a deeper stretch, you can even take the palm of your hand to the top of your head and just start to rest a little bit until you feel a deeper stretch. But just be careful not to push too far. You just want to feel a good stretch. So nice deep breaths, 3 to 5. And then I'll come back up to center. Let my chin come towards my chest, making sure we keep those shoulder blades back and down. And then I'll also gaze up at the sky. And you can also find a little bit of a flow with these neck stretches. Sometimes I'll drop my chin to my chest and just start going, from side to side, rolling it. Sometimes that way you can find little points of tension within that range of motion, and you can pause and just let that point stretch. You can even take your hand back there and rub it a little bit if that feels good. But it's just a good way to check in with your neck and how you're feeling, and just try and remedy some of those things before they get kind of out of hand.
So yeah, that movement's great because you're taking in different planes of movement all together. You can isolate also, besides the side bending and the forward backward bending, just a simple rotation separately if you would like, and see how that's feeling. A lot of times we just notice working with people and their spines that a lot of people lose a lot of their range of motion if they don't take care to be using it regularly. So the side bending, for example, a normal range of motion would be about 45 degrees, so halfway down. The rotation, a normal range of motion would be about 80 degrees, so not quite, obviously all the way over to the shoulder fully. But a lot of people can't go nearly that far And a lot of it, I think, is just because we're not using those movements on a regular basis. And I think it's just something that is super easy to mix into your routine. I mean, you can do it when you're sitting at a stoplight, you can do it when you're sitting at your desk, and a lot of times, when I'm working with somebody through my office, if they ask about, okay, what exercises do I need to do at home, to help my adjustments, and a lot of times it's like, there's not any fancy exercises, just move. Just do your range of motion, drink your water, come in for your appointments and don't miss them. A lot of times there aren't super fancy heal you exercises, it's just using your body in the way that it's intended to be used, and that is movement. So getting up and walking, using your neck, using your eyes, those are so preventative, and a lot of people overlook them because they're very simple. And it seems like they can't be that big of a deal and be super helpful, but they really are. So I would highly encourage you to do those simple exercises like that.
And just finding a level of consistency too is so beneficial to yourself, incorporating into your lifestyle, like we said with the burst exercises. These don't have to be fancy stretches, but it is important that you are consistent with them in order to get the benefits. And that's why you don't have to put all sorts of pressure on yourself to do these things for 20 minutes a day or whatever, but just here and there throughout your day is the best way, because that's how you'll be consistent and you'll incorporate them. And that's where you get the most benefit.
So I think we'll show a few actual stretches, maybe some yoga poses, some things like that you can do. You can, if you got the space to do them at work, feel free. I mean, if your coworker's like, what the heck are you doing? Get them to join in. This is great for anybody. But we'll show you a few here. You're gonna be familiar with some of them because we already do them either for warming up or cooling down in our classes. Some of them, other ones will be new. But we just want to give you some options, because sometimes it's easy to not think of something that you already know until somebody brings it up, and then it's like, oh, that's right, I could have done that. So we'll let Heather maybe demo some different stretches, some areas that are common for getting tight when we're doing a lot of seated work, and we'll start with that.
All right, sounds good. So as you can see in this seated position for me, the muscles that are in a shortened position are usually the ones that are going to become the tightest. So think like our hip flexors run from our hip to the top of our quad muscle here. When you're in this seated position, they are constantly shortened. And then our glutes back here are constantly elongated. So what ends up happening is we become weak back here, and then we become overly tight here. So that way, when you stand up, you can't quite stand up as far as you normally could if you spend a lot of time sitting, because you're tight here and you're loose here. So it just creates a little bit of an imbalance. So when we do our stretches after exercise, that's why I always try and incorporate the quad stretch, because when we do the quad stretch, we kick our heel back, squeeze that glute muscle, keep the knees close together. And once you get into this position, if you kind of pull your core in, engage your core, and pretend that there's a weight on the bottom of your knee, you can really start to feel that stretch through the top of the quad and maybe even the hip flexor, depending on how tight you are there. So this is one that's really beneficial for when you're sitting a lot during the day. You can just stand up, get into this position, take 3 to 5 deep breaths, and be really intentional just for a couple minutes.
Yeah, the cues that you have given, I have found to be really beneficial to my own stretching, because if you let that knee wing out, like it's easy to do because you think, oh, I'm just stretching my quad, and you don't squeeze your glute, bring your knee in, engage your core. Now I can feel a way different stretch than I could when I was less intentional about how I was doing it, and I think that's what's really important. It's a simple thing, but yet we have to pay attention to the details too.
And that's why I always like to tell people, just because I'm doing it one specific way, it might feel completely different in your own body. What I want you to really hone in on is just tuning in and becoming intentional with stretches. And if there's a way that you can find a better stretch to the muscle that we're stretching than what I tell you, by all means, as long as you're being safe and you're not over stressing your muscles or anything like that, make it your own stretch. We're all a little bit different. Our muscles are a little bit different. So yeah, if there's ever anything that you want to do that I'm not showing, go ahead and do it. But yeah, for the work day, the quad stretch is a really great one. Another really good stretch for during the day would be the hip flexor stretch. Like I said,
your hip flexors tend to shorten a little bit when we're sitting a lot. I've noticed in myself, my hip flexors are really tight, and sometimes that can affect the way that I walk even. Like I can feel tightness, tension, and it's like almost painful sometimes to walk. But yeah, so like a really good way to stretch your hip flexors is just standing up. You can take a nice generous step back with one of your legs. And what we'll do is we'll take that same arm on that side, bring it up, up, and then kitty corner. Think back corner of the room. And we'll really want to push this hip forward, and you'll feel that hip flexor start to stretch a little bit, depending on how tight your hip flexors are, but I definitely can feel it starting to light up a little bit. And once you bring the breath in, start to take that deep breath all the way down to your belly, you'll really feel that stretch activating. This is good for balance too. Balance and stability, there's multiple benefits for these stretches. So
I do like getting down. It's a little bit more of an aggressive hip flexor stretch, but like that one doesn't quite catch mine well. I like getting into like a lunge type position, where I can really like get the forward pressure into the hip flexor and really stretch and try to keep obviously that front knee at a nice angle there. But a lot of times then if you take your hands off your leg and let your hips press forward, you're gonna feel that might be too much for some people, in which case that first one is a much better option for you. But if you have the space to get down on the floor, I always find this to be a nice one too. We've been doing some of these on our Tuesdays and Thursday mornings for those of you who've been joining us there.
Yeah, this is a really good one. I love this one. And there was one I did actually the other night. I was watching TV and I was like, you know what, my hip flexors are so tight, I have nothing else to do while I'm watching TV, so I'm just gonna grab my foam roller. So if you guys have a foam roller or even like a pillow or something just to elevate your hips a little bit, I put it on the ground and then I just sit on it, lay back, so that the foam roller is, pretty much right underneath my tailbone, but not to the point where it's painful or pressing on my tailbone. And then I'll take one of my knees up here. Now I'm rolling. You gotta find a good position to where it's not gonna roll. There we go. So I'll take one knee in, and the other leg is straight. So the heel's not quite on the ground, your leg is just hanging a little bit, but you're pulling this knee towards your chest, and you really feel that hip flexor start to open up on the other side. Once I was just kind of being lazy, so I had my couch right here, so I laid this knee against my couch, and I just let my hips open, and I literally just sat here for about like a couple minutes and let my hips open up a little bit. And the next day, you guys, my hip flexors were actually like sore. Like I had worked out because they were not used to being stretched or accessed or anything like that. So that was like a restorative yoga pose technically, but it was just a really beneficial little stretch that I did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I think best case scenario, taking breaks throughout the day so these things don't keep adding up and adding up. But nonetheless, you can come in the evening and do either extra work, or if you didn't get to it as much as you'd hoped during the day, attack it in the evening. Like Heather said, this isn't like a workout. You can have the TV on and you can be doing this, or you can, whatever, you can be sort of multitasking.
Mm-hmm. And multitasking is like the only way that I've been able to find consistency. Like the same thing with other things, like listening to a podcast while I'm doing the dishes, or listening to a podcast while I'm showering, like just finding ways to do more than one thing and have it be like a positive thing for you, because that way you have more time to do more things. And that's really the way that it makes it easier to incorporate it into your lifestyle, I think.
Yeah. So in a seated position, another area that I think we really get a lot of common complaints and strain is up into the shoulder and pec area up here. And so a lot of people who maybe aren't being conscious of their posture end up having a little bit of a slouch and even a little bit of a forward roll with the shoulders. And there can be a lot of pinching of many structures here. It can be vascular structures, like arteries, it can be nerves. There's a lot of issues that come with that position. And we see that a lot of people are do just from a seated position, you know, is to scoot forward on your chair, rotate your hands outward, and then let your shoulders drop down and back, like you almost squeeze your shoulder blades together, and you'll feel your shoulders can open there, and you can squeeze your back and make sure that you're using those muscles. Make sure your chin is tucked in, and then we just use the breath here to hold this position. So it's just doing a handful of abdominal breaths, so our belly is going in and out, maintaining this position where our shoulders are rotated and opened, and where our muscles are being activated in our back. And you can do a couple deep breaths like this. You can go right back to your work, but to engage the back muscles, to open up the shoulders is really good for our habits, and our habits create our eventual physiology. Like our body will become whatever our habits are. So if our habits are poor posture, eventually our spine might start to deform. We might get hunched back that we can't correct with posture anymore. And so at the beginning, these things are correctable. After a while, they're not. And that's the whole point, is to be on the front end of this, because you know, someday if you came into my office and you're real hunched over and you're like, oh my gosh, I've gotten so hunched over, can you help me? And we take an x-ray and the bones have actually begun to deform from that repetitive position, we're kind of to a point where we can't fix that anymore. You know, we can try to prevent it from getting worse. We can try to, you know, improve any little bits we can in the soft tissues, but we really want to be on the front end of this in a preventative way. And like I said, the hardest part, I think, is because these things are so simple that we write them off, like that it can't be enough. But habits are what make us, and they really are enough.
Definitely. So yeah, a couple of pec stretches that I like to incorporate, and we've done a lot of these in our stretches after our workouts too. One of them being just getting into a neutral spine position, feet about hip width apart. We'll take our fingertips behind our back here, interlace the fingertips, and instantly start to pull those palms down and away from your body. Keeping that core nice and tight. It's easy to let the belly kind of hang out here, but we really want to keep it in so that the primary opener right now is our chest. So once you're in that position, chin nice and level with the ground, take some deep breaths. And if you're able, this is a time where I like to start to widen through the legs. And if you can, you know, you can hinge at the hips and let your chest come down just until you get about to here even. Pulling those palms away from the back. This is kind of like hitting two places in one, because when we're sitting, you know, our hamstrings are getting a little tighter. So if you can, hinge through the hips and do a chest stretch and a hamstring stretch in one, I mean, that's like the most benefit, but even just the pec stretch is huge. So that's one pec stretch you can do. Another one would be if you have a wall close by, you'll place your palm against the wall at about shoulder height. You can do this a couple different ways. Sometimes I'll put my shoulder right up against the wall and keep that shoulder touching the wall. Slowly start to turn your body away from the wall until you feel that stretch through the shoulder, and then you'll pause. As soon as you feel that stretch through the shoulder, take a pause and take a couple deep breaths. Same thing here, you'll always want to make sure that your upper body is in a good position posturally. We're keeping our shoulder blades back and down. We're not like arcing. The shoulders like to come up towards the ears a lot when we're trying to stretch too. So just be conscious of keeping them nice and low. So once again, keeping that shoulder against the wall. The hand is at about shoulder height. And we slowly turn our bodies away from the wall. And you're probably not going to get very far, and that's okay. Once you feel that stretch, that's all you need. 3 to 5 deep breaths there.
I just think that always feels so nice too. It's like, ooh, that's good. Like you feel like you're ready to dive back into something. Yeah. It's hard to get yourself to take the breaks, but then when you do, I think you always are like glad you did.
Yeah.
Sort of the same with exercise. Like sometimes you're rushing and you're like, oh, I don't want to go, I don't want to do it, you know, whatever.
Sure.
And then when you do it, it's like, I'm really glad I did that. I feel a lot better.
That's like, this is weird to say because,
You know, you would think that since I teach fitness, I'm like passionate enough about it to be like, I want to go work out. But like, that's not it, you guys. Like, before the workouts, I'm like, oh, some days, you know, and the reason that I do it and the thing that drives me is like remembering, like, why am I doing this? And also remembering, like, the feeling that you get afterwards. You know, you feel so good. You've just done something super good for yourself. I've found that, like, if I put too much pressure on myself before and I'm like, I should be happier, I should be like more eager to do this. Like, no, that's not always normal to be excited about doing that, but we do it because we know it's good for us and we know that it'll make us feel good afterwards and like the whole day, you know? So,
For sure, yeah. Do you have any other yoga poses you'd like to show that you think are great to incorporate into a day?
yeah, well, I don't know if it's really a yoga pose, but it's called a Piriformis stretch. This is a really good one. You can just, you know, if you're realizing your hips are feeling tight while you're at work, you can literally just get into this position from where you're at. So you'll want to get into that neutral position with the hips. Knees will be about hip width apart, feet will be about hip width apart, flat on the ground. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna cross one ankle right over the knee. So in this position, you know, if you can't quite get here, sometimes the knee will come up depending on how tight that piriformis muscle is, and that's okay. The goal here is just to get this part of your leg as flat as you can. So if you can, hold your ankle, brace it with one hand, take the other hand on your knee, and just gently press down until you feel that stretch through your hip. And once you do, just take a nice deep breath. Bring in the breath, and that stretch will start to deepen.
You can almost feel it through the whole glute, maybe just from doing leg day yesterday.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm definitely feeling it. Yeah, and the piriformis is a muscle in the hip that's super hard to access with stretches, but it's like the primary one that if it's too tight, that's where you're gonna feel that tightness in your hips. So this is a really good one I love to do while I'm watching TV. If I find that I'm just like feeling stagnant, I'll just get on the edge of the couch, get into this stretch, and just take some deep breaths. And like I said, you know, depending on how tight you are, your knee might be up here, and that's okay. Just go, you know, feel it out. Your body's different, so go at your own pace.
You may also find within your own body that there's a significant asymmetry from one side to the other, and that's not necessarily abnormal. You know, you don't have to worry about that, and then you just will know that maybe a certain side needs a little bit more TLC than the other side.
Yeah, for sure. And now that you say that, I'm realizing my right side is definitely tighter. Yeah. Yeah, that's one of my favorites just while watching TV. I'm kind of a weirdo, and sometimes I'll just get on the floor. We have a wood floor, so I like to just get on the floor and like roll around. So one of them that I really like to do is you take one leg and you cross it like you're gonna come into like an Indian style seated position. And you'll take it over just a little bit more than you usually would so that the top of your thigh is pretty much straight with your body. And then I will take the other one. This is kind of a tough one, so if you need to sit on a pillow or elevate your hips, that's okay, because a lot of people are really tight through the hips. So we'll take this other one right on top so that both of our thighs are pretty much pointing straight forward. And then we'll grab our feet, hug them in towards our body, and you'll feel that stretch kind of light up through your hips. And take a deep breath in. One thing with these hip stretches is that they can be kind of intense. So you have to find that line between pushing too far and, you know, pushing just far enough to get the stretch. And you'll learn that over time as you start to do these stretches, because there is a level of intensity that comes with stretching, especially the hips, I think, where you just have to kind of breathe through it. And once you're done, you'll feel so much more open Important to remember to keep the back nice and straight in this position too. So once again, we'll cross our leg like we're gonna get into an Indian style seated position. Straighten that thigh, bring the other one over, and hug those ankles in towards the body. And like I said, you know, this one is really easy to just kind of get into if you're watching TV or you're just taking something in and you're not doing anything with your body. All you really have to do is get into this position and breathe. So
I'm noticing it's easy to let your shoulders come up when you're pulling your ankles back if you're not really conscious of that in this position.
oh, sure, yeah, for sure. And you know, like, you don't have to be like pulling your ankles back, like yanking them back, just back far enough to where you're feeling that stretch. If you really feel your shoulders coming up, just loosen up a little bit, you know. You can even relax fully. You can take your hands off your ankles and you'll still feel that good stretch through your hips. So,
Yeah, good ones.
thanks.
So, do you have any others, or is that?
I guess I have one more.
Okay.
If you guys have a foam roller or even like a big thick pillow you can kind of fold. This one is like my favorite. So the foam roller is nice because you can kind of use it to support your whole spine in this. But I'll just get onto my foam roller so that your head can rest on that foam roller and your butt might be hanging off depending on how tall the foam roller is.
Yeah, this one's pretty tall, so.
But this is another good chest opener stretch that I forgot about. But what we're gonna do is we're just gonna basically do like a snow angel. Tracing our fingertips along the ground, and depending on how tight you are through the upper body, your fingertips might not even come to the ground. But this is just a really good way to kind of passively stretch the pecs without needing to put a whole lot of effort in. But this is probably my favorite one. This is probably my favorite pec stretch because you just feel everything opening up. It's just so nice. So yeah, sometimes I'll just put my arms in different positions, straight out, and just breathe for a little bit. You can put them straight up and breathe. And breathing, when we breathe all the way down into the belly. So you know, there's breathing into your chest, where your chest rises up and down, and that's shallow breathing. But we really want to take that breath all the way down. It's called diaphragmatic breathing, which basically just means we're using that diaphragm to pull that breath all the way down into our belly. So while you're doing these stretches, do the best you can to try and pull that breath all the way down. But yeah, that one is one of my faves.
Cool. Yeah, good. Well, I mean, we covered a lot, but I just think it is such great information. So feel free to, you know, play back any sections that you need to review again, or if you're running out of ideas, whatever it might be. But, you know, just try to take good care of yourself, especially when you have to do a lot of sitting, because like I said, it's not real natural for the body and you don't want it to catch up with you over time. So, good. Thanks much.
Thanks, guys.